Ooh-wee. January was a hot mess, so you know what that means. Lots of DNFs. Get yourself a beverage or a snack, and let's just get on into it. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Nakia. Welcome to my channel. So we are going to talk about all the books I DNF'd in the month of January. That's what this video might as well be called, because that's what you got coming. I have 9 books to talk about, and of those 9 books, 7 were DNFs. And then the other 2 were 4.5-star reads. So I had to comb through all the trash to get to the treasure. So if you are new here, I will start with the DNFs and then work my way up to the best books that I read during the month. So without further ado, let's just do this. All right, first up, we have a book that is not a DNF. It's more so on hold because I was enjoying it. I just really lost the mood for it in the month of January. But this one is A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons by Kate Kavari. Now, this one is a historical fiction mystery book. It is a closed circle mystery, which you know I love. And in this book, we are following a woman named Saffron Everly. She is I believe, a research assistant. She is in the world of botany, clearly by the title, and she is attending a party with a bunch of other college professors and their wives and whatnot. And the wife of one of the professors of this party ends up dead. And of course, we are led to believe that she was murdered. So Saffron decides to try to piece together clues to figure out what happened to this woman. And it was good. I got to chapter 3, page 25, but I just lost the mood for it. It was slow, and that's fine. It was comfy, cozy, but I guess this is more probably a fall book for me, just for January. I just wasn't necessarily in the mood. I needed something with a little more faster pace. So anyway, this is on hold. I will probably come back to this in a month where I have another DNF, or in the fall of this year. Stay tuned to find out. And now let's move on to the DNFs. All right, first up on the DNFs list, I have a book that was a Christmas book, but I was like, we're going to keep the Christmas train going early in January. And that was not the problem with this book. It was other things. And I'm speaking of A Murder at Balmoral by Chris McGeorge. Now, this one is another murder mystery, closed circle. I keep failing at these, but I will not give up. But in this one, we are following a fictional royal family who have gathered for Christmas at their castle. And in this one, King Eric drops dead at the Christmas party. And then, of course, we have to figure out what happened to him. I just was not into the writing of this book. It starts off where we're following or looking into a play that's about what happened. So I was confused, like, is this supposed to be fictional? Is it supposed to be real? I don't get it. I also just did not care about any of the characters in this story. And I think I'm realizing, I talked about this last month, but stories that have to do with just like rich families and their drama, I just don't care. And then they always start off with, oh, this is Aunt so-and-so, and this is Uncle so-and-so, and he did X, Y, and Z. I generally don't care. And I just like to follow 1 or 2 characters and be invested with them. And then, of course, get to know other people in their lives, but I like to be from their POVs, and that's it. This was not necessarily one with a lot of POVs, but we were just learning about a lot of people that I just did not care about. I believe we even start off this book with a list of key players. And it goes on. It says it's a character sheet, but I mean, it goes on and on. And so, yeah, this just wasn't the business for me. And so I DNF'd it at chapter 2, page 22. Y'all know I'm quick. When I know it ain't for me, we moving on. So on to the next one. All right, next up, we have a horror novel, and I picked these up sparingly, and it usually takes a lot for a horror novel to pique my interest enough for me to want to read it. This one was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Award for Best Horror Novel. I don't know if you can see I think you can see my cat Daisy. Anyway, this one was nominated for Best Horror Novel for 2022. Is it 2022? Yes. What year are we talking about? But anyway, I'm speaking of Leech by Hiram Inez. I was intrigued by this one because it is a gothic horror sci-fi novel. And I mean, look at this cover. It is just delicious. This book is hard to talk about because the book is confusing, but I'm gonna try. In this book, we are following a doctor who shows up at a home of a baron, which we'll try to put something on the screen for what that means, but it has something to do with politics or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, he is called to the home of this baron who has recently died, and he is there to investigate what happened to him. And there are weird things about this body and corpse that lead him to believe that, you know, there was a parasitic thing and it is infecting other people and whatnot. Like I said, this book was confusing, so it's hard to talk about. But I was so drawn into the writing. When I first started this book, I was like, oh, this is so beautifully written. I was cozied up. I was like, oh, this is gonna be so good. And then we got to the confusing parts. It has 2 POVs, and one of the POVs is from a entity, a thing. I think this would work better if it was visual in a movie form, but reading it, it was so confusing because the author did not do anything to let you know when we were changing POVs. There was no break in paragraph, there was no heading, no chapter breaks. It just went from one to the next, and I was like, what the hell am I reading? And then on top of that, the writing got to be a bit much. Like at first it was lyrical and everything, and I was into it when we were describing the settings and all of that. But then when we got into the actual, you know, story and the writing was still like that on top of it being confusing with the POVs, I was like, I can't. I will just take all day trying to get through this book. And of course, I looked on Goodreads and other people said the same thing. So it wasn't just me. I'm glad it was nominated, but this just wasn't for me. So anyway, next. We're going to keep going through these because I got a lot of DNF to talk about. So moving on to the next one. Okay, next up we have another Gothic historical fiction book. This one is another horror. And yeah, for some reason, January was just not the month for me for historical fiction. After I read The Nurse's Secret, I was chasing that high and these just weren't delivering. But this one is by an author who I've read from before, Laura Purcell, I have spoken about. I loved her book, The Silent Companion, so I was really looking forward to this one. This one takes place in a wintry setting. I think I talked about this in my end of the year or something like that TBR. I will link it here. But this one is The House of Whispers. And in this novel, we follow a woman named Hester, who is a nurse who is showing up at the Morovin house to care for a now mute and paralyzed woman named Miss Pinecroft. And there are secrets and things that happened when Miss Pinecroft and her husband took in some prisoners and were doing some experiments. And so while Hester's there, she discovers weird things are going on in his house. And then she also has to figure out what happened to Hester and the prisoners and whatnot. I don't know. I didn't get that far. This one was also rather slow for me, but this one was like slower than the Poisons and Botanists. But this one was slower than the Botanist Parties and Poisons book. I was more into that one. This one I was trying to push through, but it just was not working. This one is also Victorian era Gothic historical fiction. So I was really into the horse-drawn carriage and all of that. That's how this book starts, with her getting a carriage ride to the house that she's going to be staying in. But then once she got to the house, that's when I just got lost. I just didn't care anymore. I wasn't really into her as a character. I didn't really care about what was going on in the house. I just didn't care. So I DNF'd this one on page 23, chapter 3. I usually end up around about that spot when I decide to DNF a book. If I get further, you really have some other issues going on. Usually when I get to like chapter 3, I'm just like, I just don't care. Why am I still reading this? So I had first said that I was going to pick this up later. And then later on I thought about it and I was like, I don't think I'm going to go back to that book. So hey, you never know. Maybe 10, 20 years down the line, I may decide to pick it up again. But for right now, it's a DNF. I forgot to say that a lot of these books were on my 23 books to read in 2023 video. I will link it here, and these were at the top of my TBR. So A Murder at Balmoral was on that list, Leech was on that list, and then these next ones were also on that list. So so far, as I said, this year was just not off to a good start with me trying to read books that I was really looking forward to this year. And this next one, of course, is no exception. Another winter book that I was ready to cozy up with and I had heard so much about that everyone loved. And of course, I have to be different and not love it. But this one is The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf. And I got all of these books from my library, as you can see. I wish they didn't put these stickers there, but whatever. We got the deal. But this one is supposed to be a thriller taking place in an isolated setting where this woman who is a true crime writer is staying at this isolated farmhouse where she decides to go to work on her next novel. And she discovers a child outside in the snow, and then somebody shows up who shouldn't be there. And then I think she has to keep her and the child safe. That's what I was looking for. It's not what I was getting. What the synopsis also says that I should have paid more attention to is that at this same farmhouse, 2 other people were murdered in cold blood. So this book starts off with a POV of one of the people who got murdered. And then we have another chapter where it's all in italics and I don't remember whose POV that was. And then we have another chapter where we're following the other person that got murdered. And I was like, when we get into the lady in the farmhouse? And then when we do get some stuff with the lady in the farmhouse, it's just her and her ex-husband and dealing with him and arranging to pick up, drop off her child with him or whatever. I did not care. It was just moving too slow. I just didn't care. That's the theme usually of most of my DNFs. I don't care. It's rare that it's like something problematic, but we got one on this list. That's usually rare. It's usually the writing and I just don't care. So unfortunately, that's what happened with this one. I think the setting, I was also wanting the snow and the isolated setting and it was just taking too long to get there. So looking at my journal, I DNF'd this on page 18. So I didn't get too far. I got, like I said, I got a little bit past, I got to chapter 2. And I didn't even finish chapter 2. Chapter 2 is when we got to another POV of someone else who died and I didn't care. I was like, I'm done with this. So unfortunately, this didn't work for me, but a lot of people love it. Just not me. Moving on. Okay, I had to insert this in here because I had stopped filming and everything and I remembered I forgot a DNF. How could I? This was the one on the list that I DNF'd for things that were disturbing. But anyway, I'm speaking of Lexicon by Max Berry. Now, this is a thriller sci-fi book. I found out about this through Tori Moreau. She talked about how much she loved this book and it was one of her favorite books and how it was fast-paced, all that. So I was like, sign me up. I went and looked up the synopsis, read a little bit of a sample, and I picked it up immediately in the month of January because I was already struggling to get through so many books. And I was like, maybe this is what I need. Told you I wanted something more fast-paced. This did start off just like she said. We are following a man named Will who is kidnapped from an airport. He doesn't know what's going on. I'm pretty sure he doesn't really remember a lot of stuff, but these people are out to get him and they take him from the airport and it's supposed to be because he has some secrets locked up inside of him that could help them out. That's all I knew. And then we had another character named Emily who is a streetwise teenager who is just living on the streets and she's conning people and all of that. She gets approached by this man to go be a part of an experiment and it's supposed to be that she can get a lot of money, whether she participates or not. If she does participate, I think she can get more money than if she doesn't. She still will get money regardless. And we start off with Will and the chase at the airport and it was a page turner. I was so into it, action packed. It was reminding me of Blake Crouch. And then we switched to Emily's POV and again, she's on the streets, running her little card shark hustle. I remember Tori said that too, that it involved cards and conning and all that kind of stuff, which I've said it before. I love following some criminals, con artists, some thieves, them kind of things. So anyway, I was here for it until you already know. If you're new here, you're about to find out. I don't do well with things happen to children and animals. And this one had something involving a child. This child, Emily, we found out in a book, she's only 16. And when this man approaches her to join their organization, he basically attempts to sexually assault her. Now, when he approaches her, takes her to McDonald's because she's, on the streets and hungry. And when they're at the McDonald's, he tells her to go in the bathroom and wait for him there. And she's just kind of like, okay. Again, she wants money, so she does it. And she's in the bathroom in the stall and he approaches her in the stall and that's as much as I can probably say here on YouTube. I will put a screenshot or an image of the wording from this scene, but I was highly disturbed. I was just like, wow, I just couldn't believe how far it went. Graphic, in nature. The fact that she was a teenager, I was just not okay with this. And so I was like, okay. I was actually willing to push through. I was like, maybe I can still keep reading this. But I decided to stop and check the trigger warnings on Goodreads because I did check before I read it, I believe. But I was like, let me just see what other people had to say. And other people had the same issue with this scene. A lot of people said they just can't believe that no one complained about this. They also said that there was a sex scene or two written that come up later that are just so awkward and uncomfortable. And just what I read in that scene, I was not ready to read anything else to do with sex in this book. No, thank you. So for the disturbing nature, this was a DNF. I'm pretty sure after this chapter, which was chapter 2, I stopped, which is, as I said, chapter 3 is usually it for me. I was checking out my Kindle. So like I said, sorry, Tori. I can't handle stuff like this. I just don't like to read it. And as I said, this was too graphic in details. It was on the page. It was not like somebody recounting something. And the fact this child was 16, I'm a mom, it's not okay with me. So anyway, that is another DNF for the month of January. Okay. Another one that was on my 23 books to read in 2023 list. Another one that was disappointing. Even though this one, I wasn't really sure if it was going to work for me. I just kept hearing everybody talk about it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to read it. But what I got is not what I was expecting. And I'm speaking of, almost dropped it. The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. By Stuart Turton. Now, this one is a murder mystery as well, but this one also has a sci-fi element. So I guess I thought it was going to be a little more modern than what it was, but let me just give you a little bit of what it was about. In this story, a woman named Evelyn Hardcastle is murdered, but the man who can solve the mystery of what happened to her and her murder or stop it is a man named Aiden. And every day, until he can identify the killer, he wakes up in a different body of a different guest who was at this party where Evelyn Hardcastle was murdered. So it sounds so interesting, right? But as I said, I did not know this was historical fiction as well. Did not do that intentionally. But when I got into it, I was like, okay. I picked up the audiobook, decided to do that in tandem. Of course, the audiobook narrator is British. And this one was just very slow for me. We spend a lot of time with Aiden in the first body that he wakes up in. And it was just him discovering, who he is and learning who this person is, whose body he's inhabiting. And then he meets Evelyn Hardcastle and they chit chat. And I didn't really care for her. That was a big problem for me. I was like, I should at least like her to want him to figure out what happened to her. And I didn't care about her. Also, this is another book like Murder Balmoral where we're dealing with a rich family. And so I realized, as I said, I already knew, I don't care. Eventually, I put down the physical book and I was just listening to the audiobook like, okay, I'm just going to listen to this audiobook. And then, like I said, I just got to a point where I was like, I don't care about this woman or what happened to her or the family, and I don't really care enough about the main character, Aiden. So I am really disappointed. It was not enough of a sci-fi element for me. It was just, like I said, more of just a historical fiction mystery book, and I didn't care enough about the mystery. So, sorry. I actually got pretty far in this, and I think because I had the audiobook to help me out, but I stopped on page 44, and I should have known when I opened up this book and saw this. It is a list of guests who were at the party. When I opened up the book and saw this list of guests, I was like, I know I'm not supposed to remember these folks. Okay. There were too many people, and as I said, didn't care. So unfortunately, DNF, but I did pick up 2 books that I enjoyed in the month of January after all these DNFs. One of them you should probably know because it is book 2 in a series that I am loving right now. But we're going to talk about that next. And then the other one I picked up on a whim because it was on Kindle Unlimited, and it is a thriller book that I love. 2 good books in January, but anyway, let's just get to them. Okay, first 4.5-star book of the month, but I'm probably rounding it up to 5 because that's just the way these books are going for me so far. I had a subscriber say to me when I did my TBR video, like, I'm surprised you didn't talk about the second book in the Harry Potter series. And I was like, oh, it's coming. It's coming. It was already read. So yes, of course, I'm talking about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. And of course, I have the illustrated edition. I'm so happy they have these at my library. I am disappointed to find out, though, that the illustrator Jim Kay will not be continuing. He is not going to be finishing up, I think, the last 2 or 3 books. So I don't know what they're going to do. I hope they're as good as these because I have so enjoyed. But I know he said they were a lot of work and it was taking a toll on his mental health. So, of course, we want the best for him. But I can tell in this book, it did not have as many illustrations as the first one. So I can only imagine how much work they are. But so appreciated. But anyway, you already know the story of Harry Potter, a wizard who is attending Hogwarts School of Magic. So of course, in book 2, I think every book probably picks up with him going back to Hogwarts for a new semester or a new year. And this one is no exception. We have a flying car on the front because some shenanigans happen with him and Ron where they end up taking a flying car to Hogwarts because they missed the train, the Hogwarts Express. And so anyway, we start off with some adventure. And as I said, I always enjoy the mystery of these books. This one involves a mystery with the Chamber of Secrets. And this one was a little more creepy. We had spiders, giant spiders that, look, I don't generally have an issue with spiders. That's just not my thing. I don't mind them. My daughter can't stand them. I don't mind them. But in this book, I was like, they're a bit much. There's the coffee mug I usually hold in my videos sometimes. Like I said, that was a gift to me from my mother. And I didn't realize that coffee mug has a character from this book, The Giant Spider, on it. So anyway, that was a bit disturbing in illustrated form, but I loved it all the same. I love the Halloween time that was in this book and what happened during the Halloween festivities. I just loved it. Of course, I also did the audiobook as usual, which I love and highly recommend. I will be reading book 3 probably maybe in March. We'll see. I'm on hold for the audiobook for my library and it's taken forever. I got like 5 weeks left, so I should be able to get to it in March and I cannot wait. I really wanted to pick up book 3 in February, but I was like, nope, we're going to wait for the audiobook because I could get it on audiobook. I have a credit, but I'm going to wait and read what I'm supposed to be reading. But anyway, this one had twists and turns. It took me by surprise where I was like, oh, okay. We get a little more about Voldemort. And again, I am still loving Hagrid. Yes, I am. We get some new characters that are adorable as well. And again, I thoroughly enjoyed this book and I can't wait to read book 3. So as I said, 4.5 stars, rounding up to 5. I am still loving every minute of the series and still a new fan. Let's move on. All right, last but not least, I got the coffee mug back out. So you know, this last one was a ebook. And I got this on my Kindle, part of Kindle Unlimited. So I got to read it for free. But I just discovered an author who I am loving right now. I've already started another one of her books this month. You will have to wait to see what it is. But I'm speaking of Frida McFadden. If you don't know, she is a thriller book writer and she has a large catalog of books. Like I started looking to see what else I want to read from her. And then there's just so much. I already have another one on my Kindle that I can't wait to get to. I think it's called Locked Room. But she just has so many books and I love this book. So I can't wait to read more from her. But anyway, what book did I read? You are wondering. It is Never Lie. Now, this one was perfect for this month of January. It takes place in the snow, in the winter time. And that is not what intrigued me about this book. I think I had read a little bit about it before and I thought the premise sounded interesting and I had thrown it on my Kindle for the future. And then when I looked at it again, when I had all these DNFs, I was like, oh, it takes place in the winter time? Perfect. So let me tell you what it's about. In this book, we are following a couple named Trisha and Ethan, and they are going to look at a home that is for sale that belonged to a psychiatrist named Dr. Adrian Hale. Now, in this house, she has a secret room where she kept tapes of all of her patients' therapy sessions, and each tape is labeled with the patient's initials. So we just have like EJ, BW, stuff like that. So when Trisha and Ethan go to this home, the real estate agent is not there, number one. She was supposed to be there. So they're like, what is going on? They get there. There's food in the refrigerator. There's a sleeping bag that looks like somebody's been using it recently, but everything else is like dusty, dirty. So it's weird. It's like, is somebody staying here? What's going on? Of course, they don't see anybody in the house, but Trisha is just not, she's not having it. So anyway, while they're there to look at the house, they get snowed in. There is a blizzard and they now have to stay for a few days. So while they are there, Trisha stumbles upon this hidden room in the house and she finds these tapes and she can't help herself but to start listening to these tapes. And as she starts listening, she finds out more and more about this Dr. Adrian Hale and secrets that she had. And also, I forgot to mention, Dr. Hale went missing. People believe she was murdered by her boyfriend. So when Trisha is listening to these tapes, she starts to discover what actually happened to Dr. Hale. And oh my goodness, when I say this was a page turner, I could not put it down. I loved every chapter, every minute. The chapters were short, so I just kept flying through it. And when I'm on my Kindle, I can see how much time is left in the chapter. So when I'll start a new chapter, and it's like, oh, it's only 5 minutes. It's like, oh, well, let me read this real quick. Oh, I loved every minute of it, as I said. Now, was this a perfect thriller? No. I'm pretty sure people would complain about the writing or the twists and turns and whatnot. I don't care. I loved it. When I got to the end, there were things I had questions about, like, well, wait a minute. How come? I was like, I don't care. I enjoyed it. There were multiple twists. There were things that I was like, oh, like out loud. I had things to say. We had the setting, the snowy setting that I wanted with the isolation and the cold and the fireplace. Also, there were some love scenes in this, but I love how she handled it because we faded to black and that's what I like. Keep it clean. I don't need to be in your bedroom. I don't need to be in your sheets. Also, this book had minimal POVs. Another thing I love. We had the POV from Trisha, the wife that's staying in the home of Dr. Adrian Hale. And then we also had the POVs in the past of Dr. Adrian Hale, where we were finding out what she was going through when she was talking to these patients. So Trisha would listen to the tapes And then we would find out what Dr. Adrian Hale was going through. And like I said, the way this was woven together, I thought I knew where it was going, because when you start to look at the initials of the patients, you start thinking about who these patients could be that are involved in this story. And like I said, I thought I had it figured out, but I did not. She fooled me, and I am happy for it. This was dark and twisty, and as I said, I was here for all of it. So the only reason it's not 5 stars is because, like I said, when I got to the end, I had a question or two, and I was like, I wonder if I reread it, if I would get answers to these questions, or would I still be like, nope, that don't really make sense. But as I said, because of my enjoyment of it, and again, I enjoyed the twist that came, I still loved it. And as I said, I give it 4.5 stars. Is this for everybody? I don't know. I loved it. It has high ratings on Goodreads and Amazon and all that stuff. But again, it is not a perfect thriller. I don't think many thrillers are, but I loved it. So as I said, 4.5 stars. I just finished this at the end of January, and it just put me in a slump for February. Damn it. Let's move on. So my beautiful people, that wraps up my January reading month. I decided to go ahead and do a wrap up because my wrap ups end up being longer because of all the DNFs. So there's no way I cannot do wrap ups. I would either have to just do my DNFs separately and then do shorter weekly updates or whatever, or just do them all as a wrap up. And that's what I'm gonna do as far as I'm concerned right now. Hopefully that still works for you. But let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books, if you've DNF'd any of these books. I'm always curious to know if it's not just me, because you always chime in and make me feel better that I'm not just a cold-hearted snake. Or if you have not read any of these books, you can also let us know what your best book was that you read in the month of January. I'd love to know that as well. And also, if you want to let me know that you made it this far in the video, you can leave me a couch emoji for the Never Lie book that I just love so much. And she was a therapist, therapist's couch. It's also on the cover of the book. Go ahead and leave me that emoji. You can leave it to let me know that you made this far in the video, and or show me some love. All is appreciated. And as always, ways you can support my channel are always linked below. Link to my Ko-fi account where you can donate towards coffee, tea, ebooks, all that good stuff, as well as all the books mentioned will be linked below as well. So I think that covers everything, my beautiful people. So until next time, snuggle up in your hideaway with a good book, unplug as much as possible, be kind to all kind, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. I forgot last month, and probably the last couple videos, to do my little bit for those of you who stick around. But yeah, I put my hair up. You may think, oh, she was trying to do something different. No, hair is a mess and it needs to be done, and I just threw it up to keep it out my way. But for me, it feels weird, and I also feel like there's just so much space over here because my hair is up. But anyway, I also can let you know that the book I am reading currently, the other Frida McFadden book, is The Housemaid. This was also at the top of my TBR, and I have a bunch of DNFs again. So I was looking on my Kindle and I was like, should I do it? Should I have 2 of her books back to back? We are doing it. And I'm only like 2 chapters in, but I'm enjoying it so far. Excuse the ruckus. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far and can't wait to see where it goes. So stay tuned. Keep up with me on Goodreads. That's the best way to know what I'm reading, DNFing, and all that good stuff. Oh yeah, and I also just recently DNF'd. Everyone in my family has killed someone. Stay tuned to find out why. All right, bye.